Hey, what's up YouTube? Julio here, and in today's video I'm going to be showing you guys how you can create this responsive portfolio site. Before I say anything else, I just want to show you guys what the website actually looks like. So for my header section, I have this gradient text, then I have a little bit of information of what the person does, and then I have my hamburger menu, which also has a cool animation. And if I click it, I have a full screen navigation that will expand, and then when I hover over my navigation items, you can see that I have the same gradient effect. Also, throughout the whole site, I'm not going to be using any backgrounds aside from the one that the body has, and it's this one that you can see with the graphics. It's going to be fixed, which means that it's going to be following along as I scroll. And I'm also going to be using the animate on scroll library, and the reason for that is that I want to achieve the cool effects as I scroll that you can see here. And this is the about section. It has an image, a bio, and some social media icons. Then I have a services section, and I have some icons with a little bit of information about what the person does. Then I have a portfolio section, and as you can see, as I keep scrolling, my items will just fade in. And then I have a work experience section, and that's just going to have a timeline. And finally, I have a contact section, and that's just going to have a contact form. Then I have a footer, and in the corner here, I just have this button. As you can see, it has a pulsing animation, and if I click it, it's just gonna send me all the way back to the top. Same thing with my navigation. If I click on a specific item, it's going to take me to that section. And as I mentioned, the website is fully responsive, so if I go into my responsive view and I try to resize it, you can see how my font size changes, my background as well, and my navigation goes from a row to a column, and everything is just stacking up now. As you can see, images up top, then my services, my work, then my timeline, and the contact form. And let me just make this bigger again so you can see. Over here, everything just expands. Same thing with my portfolio and my services. So yeah guys, if you want to know how I built this, please make sure that you stick around until the end of the video. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe and hit the bell notifications so that you don't miss any videos. Also, if you like the video, don't forget thumbs up, and if you're already a subscriber, thank you for all your support. And before any further ado, let's just get into the video. So as I mentioned before, we're going to be using the animate on scroll library, and for that I'm on the GitHub page for the project. And what you want to do is just scroll down to installation. Then you want to grab the style sheet. You're going to copy it and paste it in your index. You also want to do the same thing for the script. You don't have to worry about the second one though. We're going to be using that later on when we want to initialize it. And you also don't have to worry about actually going around and grabbing all these links if you plan on following along. I'll just leave a link in the description below to my Google Drive, and that's going to have a folder with all the necessary files. I still recommend you going into the AOS GitHub page and get familiar with the documentation. That being said, now for my HTML markup, the first thing that I'll do is just open up some header tags. And now I'm just gonna lay out the markup for my hamburger menu. I'm going to have a div with the class of menu toggler. Then I'm going to have a div with the class of bar, the class of half, and the class of start. I'll just copy and paste that 2 more times. And for the one in the middle, you want to get rid of the half and start classes. And for the last one, you want to replace start with end, and that's going to be all. Now I'm just going to open up the nav tag, and then I'll give it the class of top nav. Inside of that, I'll have a UL with the class of nav list. Then I'll have an LI, a link with the class of nav link. It's going to be pointed to the index, and it's going to be called home. I'll copy that and paste it several more times, and then I'll just modify it accordingly. This one will be for the about. This will be for portfolio. Actually, this one is going to be services. And then it's going to be portfolio, experience, and finally contact. You also want to modify the href, and for that I'm just going to have a placeholder, and I'm just going to name it accordingly again. So it's going to be about, services, portfolio, experience, and then contact. Now underneath of my nav, I want to have another div, and that's going to have the class of it's going to be the div for my main text, and that's going to have the class of landing text. Then I'm going to have an h1, and it's going to have the name Rosie Ellis. Then I'm going to come down here and open up some h6 tags, and it's going to read UI, UX, designer, and web developer. And that's going to be pretty much it for the header. Next thing is I'm going to come underneath of the header, and I'm going to open up some section tags, and it's going to have the class of about and the ID of about as well. Then I'm going to have the class, a div class of container, and inside of my container div, I'm going to have another div with the class of portfolio, actually not portfolio, profile, img. Inside of that, I'm going to have my image, and it's going to be in the images folder, and it's going to be profile. Then underneath of that div, I want to have another div with the class of about details, and that's just going to have another div inside of it, and it's going to be called about heading. Inside of that, I'll have an h1, and then it's going to say about, and then an h6, and it's going to say myself. Underneath of my about heading, I'm going to open up a paragraph tag, and it's just going to have some dummy text. Just bring that down in one line to make it neater. And something else that I want to do is I want to make it longer, so I'll just copy some of the dummy text and do the same thing, and basically just like paste it underneath again. After that's done, what I want to do is just come down here and underneath my about details and create a div for my social media icons with the class social media. Then again, I'm just going to have a UL with the class of nav list, and the reason for that is because I want to have the same styles. Then I'm going to have an LI, a link, and inside of that link I'm gonna give it the class of nav, actually icon link. Inside of the anchor tag, I want to have my icon itself, so it's going to be FA. Again, the class of FA, Facebook, square. And now I'll just copy and paste that 2 more times. And the next icon is going to have the class of Twitter. And the last one, it's going to be for dribble. Let's see how that's looking so far. And everything is looking good. And that's going to be pretty much it for my about section. Now I'll just come down here again, open up another section, and it's going to have the class of services and the ID of services as well. Again, I'm going to have a container, and here it's going to be a little different because I'm going to have now the main heading that I'm going to use throughout the rest of the site. And for that, I'm just going to have a div with the class of section heading. Inside of that, I'm going to have an H1, and it's going to say services, an H6, and it's going to say what I can do for you. Now underneath of my heading, my section heading, I'm going to have a div with the class of my skills. Then inside of that div, I'm going to have a div with the class of skill. Inside of my skill div, what I want to do is I want to have another div, and it's going to have the class of icon container. Inside of my icon container, it's where I'm going to have my icon. Again, it's going to be FAS. This time around, it's going to be FAS. And then it's going to be FA layer group. The next thing that I want to do is go underneath my icon container div, and I'll just have an H1, and it's going to say web design. Then I want to have a P tag, and it's going to have a brief description. And for that, I'll just come up here and I'll just copy and paste some of the text, and then I'll just paste it in here twice. And now I want to grab the skill div, and I want to copy and paste it 2 more times and modify it. And the second one is going to be for web development, and we have to change it from layer to code. For the third one, it's going to be chart, and it's going to read product strategy. And that's going to be pretty much it for my services section. Now for the next section, I'm just gonna come up here, and I'm just gonna copy and paste this portion up until the heading ends, and I'll just paste it. Now what I want to do is come down here, close my div tag for the container, and close my section. I also want to modify the classes, and I'm gonna switch it from services to portfolio. Same thing with my ID. And you also want to change what the heading says. This one is going to say portfolio, and for the H6, it's going to read view some of my recent work. Now underneath of my section heading, what I want to do is I want to open up a div with the class of portfolio item. Inside of my portfolio item, what I want to do is have another div with the class of portfolio img, and I'm going to have my image, and it's going to be it's going to be in the images folder, and it's going to be port item 1. Underneath of my portfolio image, what I want to do is open up another div with the class of portfolio description. And inside of that, what I want to do is something really basic. So I'm just going to have an H6, and it's going to read web development. Then it's going to be followed by an H1, and it's going to read blog website. So that's basically the name of the project. Again, I'm going to have an H6, and it's going to read, actually not an H6, it's going to be a brief description. So what I want is a paragraph tag. And again, what I'll do is just come up here, copy and paste the text. Then I'm going to paste it inside of my p tag. Finally, underneath of my p tag, I want to have an anchor, and it's going to have the class of CTA. It's not going to go anywhere, and it's going to read view details. Now what we want to do is just repeat the same process. So I'm going to copy the entire portfolio items div, and I'm going to paste it one more time, and then once more. What I want to do now is just modify it. So the first thing I'll do is just grab my bottom section, which is going to be the portfolio description. I want to delete it, and I want to move it on top of my portfolio image. And that's just so that we get that order that I showed you from the demo. Now what I want to do is just switch it up as far as like the names. And for this one, it's just going to read web design, and it's going to read layout, for the next one, what we want to do is just switch it over, and it's going to read again web design, and the name is going to be product sketch. And that's going to be pretty much it for my portfolio section. Let's go back to the browser and see how that looks. And everything looks good. The only thing that we have to do is just switch over the images. So to do that, we're just going to come down to the second one and then the third one. So this will be the second one. Change it over to 2, and the last one to 3. And as you can see, now we have the right images. What I want to do again is repeat the same process from before. I'm going to copy and paste this portion of my section just to save a little bit of time. Again, come down here, close my container div, and close up my section. Now I'll just switch over the class names, and this one will read experience. Again, switch over the ID to the same thing. And then for my section heading, the H1 will read experience. Actually, I believe it was work experience. And then for the H6, it's just going to read past and current jobs. Underneath of my headings, section heading, what I want to do is just open up a div with the class of timeline. And this one is going to be pretty simple, which is going to have a UL, then an LI with the class of date. Something else that we also want to do with the LI is give it a data attribute, and it's going to be data date. And in here is just going to be the date itself. And for the first one, it was 2011 present. Now inside of my LI, what I want to do is just have a brief description. So for that, I'm just going to have an H1. It's going to read Google. And then I'm going to have a P tag. Again, actually I'm just going to copy and paste the whole thing for the text. And now I'll just copy and paste my LI 2 more times. I want to switch over to data again. The H1 is going to be Facebook, and that was from 2008, I believe, 2011. And finally, the last one was 2002 till 2007. And this was Microsoft. And that's going to be all for the experience section. Again, we're going to repeat the same process. We're going to copy this the section and the heading. Come down here, and again, we want to close the container and the section. Now we want to switch the class name to contact. Same thing with the ID. Section heading is going to be contact, and the H6 is going to read let's work together. Underneath of my section heading, what I want to do is just have a form. It's not going to go anywhere, so I'm just not going to do anything here for the action. I'm going to have a label. The label is going to be for name, and it's going to say name. And something else that we want to do is come down here underneath the label and do input. It's going to be of type text. Now we have to match it up with the label. It's going to have the same name basically, and name is going to be name. Next thing that we have to do is use a placeholder, and it's going to read enter your name and do required for some validation. Now what I'll do is just copy and paste the label and the input. I'll paste it underneath, and I'm going to switch over this to email. Label is going to be for email. We also have to come down here on the input, switch it over to email, and as opposed to text, it's going to be of type email. Switch over the name to email as well, then enter your name. It's going to be replaced with email, and it's also going to be required. Now we want the next thing that we want to do for that, I'll just grab the label because this one is going to be a little bit different, and it's going to read subject. Actually, it's not subject, it's going to be services. And for that, I'm going to have options. So select. The name is going to be, let's say, services. The ID, services. Again, we want to match up the label. So here we just say it's for services. And inside of my select, I want to have the options itself. And what I'll do now is just services ID services. I don't know why it's giving me an error. Do I have another services portfolio? Oh, the reason is because I already have another ID with the service. So for that, I'll just switch it over and make it shorter. Now again, back inside for my options, the value, it's going to be, actually this form isn't really going to be submitted, so I'm not even going to bother to do all those things. And for that, I'll just do web design. The next option is going to be web development, and the last one is basically going to be the same, web design development. Now underneath of my select, I want to have a text area, so for that I'll just copy the label again, and this one is going to be for subject. Now text area, make it a little smaller. ID, subject, name, subject. And what we want to do now is create the button. And for that, input type, we're going to replace that with submit, and value, it's going to be submit. And that's going to be pretty much it for the contact form. Finally, we're going to have the footer, and it's going to have the class of copyright. Inside of my footer, what I want to do is have another div with the class of up, and it's also going to have the ID of up. In there, I want to have my icon. In the class, it's going to be FAS, FA, chevron, up. Now what I want to do is just basically open up a p tag, and I'm going to have my copyright info 2019 Rosie Ellis. And that's going to be pretty much it for the HTML markup. Let's just see how that looks on the browser. And everything looks good. So the next thing that we have to do is actually style the whole thing. So join me now in the CSS. And now comes the fun part, which is styling the whole website with some CSS. As you can see here, I have some comments, and that's basically what I'm using as a structure to keep the code more organized. Inside of my global styles, what I want to do is do some basic resets of my margins and paddings, set them to 0, box sizing to border box. Then I'm going to target my HTML document. The font size is going to be 10 pixels. Font family is going to be Roboto. And if that's not available, it's going to have a fallback of sans serif. Color, I'm going to set it to a light gray. Now I'm going to target the body. It's going to have a width of 100% and a height of 100% as well. Background, I'm going to do the image here, and it's just going to point to my images folder. Use site BG. Background repeat is going to be no repeat. The position is going to be center, and the attachment is going to be fixed. The background size is going to be set to cover. Now I'm going to target my anchor tags. Do a text decoration of none. Also give them a color of that light gray. Now I'll target my p tags, and they're just going to have a font size of 1.8 rem and a font weight of 300. And finally, all I'm going to do here is just target my images, and I'll do a width of 100%. Next thing that I'll do is just target my header. So let's find that comment, and I'll do header width 100%, height of 100 of the viewport height. Next, I'm going to target the top nav. It's going to have a width 100%, a height again of 100 of the viewport height, and it's also going to have a position of fixed, and it's going to have a background color of a different shade of that blue, so 16 to D. Next, I'm just going to give it a border radius bottom of 100%, well, border bottom right radius, and I'll just copy and paste that down and switch it over from right to left. I also want to animate the border later on when we open up the nav, so I'll do a transition all 650 ms. It's going to be a cubic Bezier 1001. Next, I want to style my UL, so nav list style none with 100% height of 100%, and I also want to do a display of flex, justify my content to the center, and also align my items to the center. Now what I want to do is just target my LI and create some separation by giving it margin left and right of 2 rem. Now I'm going to style my nav link, and that's going to be pretty simple. I'm just going to have a font family of Toy Historia Demo, and again going to have a fallback in case it's not available because it's a font that I downloaded, and I'm also going to give a font size of 5 rem. Next, it's just going to have padding all around, and the reason for that is just because sometimes when you do the next effect, which is going to be the background clipping for the gradient, then some of the stuff gets cut out, so that padding is just gonna help keep it all like in place. Now it's just going to be the hover effect itself, so nav link hover, and we also want to do a focus, so nav link focus, and here it's just going to be the background, not the background color because we're doing a gradient, so we have to do background linear gradient, and it's going to be to top. It's going to be that yellow, which is FFE838. Now we do the pink, which is FD57BF. And as you can see, if I hover over the items, now I have my background color. And what we want to do now is use the WebKit prefix, and it's going to be background clip, and we do text. Now nothing happens if I hover them, but that's because we have to do one more thing, and that's background clip, text fill color, and set it to transparent. And as you can see, now I have the hover effect. If I focus, then my background color stays, and that's going to be all for the text. Next thing that I'll do is hide my nav because we don't really need it at this point, so I'll just come down here and give it a top position of negative 100 of the viewport height, and that's just going to hide it. Something that I want to do here is I want to create the styles for my navigation when it's opened, so I'll do top nav dot open. So basically I'm selecting the div with those two classes, which is what I'm going to do later on when I apply the open class to my top nav div through jQuery. So the top position is going to be 0, so that's just going to bring it down in place, and the border radius is going to be initial, so there's going to be no border. That's just going to give us the nice transition animation effect. Now what I want to do is actually work on the hamburger menu itself. So menu toggler, and position is going to be absolute. Top is going to be 5 rem, and the right 5 rem as well. Width 5 rem, height 4 rem. Now I want to give it a display of flex. That's just basically gonna center all of my lines in the middle. But since it's gonna display in a row, I want to do a flex direction of column. And something else that I want to do is do justify content space between. I'm just gonna create some separation between the lines, and then cursor is going to be pointer. And since we want to keep this on top of everything, we're just going to give it a C index of a high number. And again, we want to do a transition just for that smooth animation later on when we click on the hamburger menu, and it's going to be on the transform. It's going to be 650 ms ease out. Now what we want to do is actually work on the, what I want to do now is just define the behavior that's going to have when I apply the class of open, which is again something that I'll use later on when we do the jQuery. And transform is just going to be rotate and -45 degrees. Now I want to work on the bar. And it's just going to have that gradient background, so linear gradient, and it's going to be to right. We need that yellow and the pink. Now we also have to give it a width and height, and the width is going to be 100%. The height is going to be 4 pixels, and as you can see, now we have the lines. I want to make the lines a little better, so I'm going to give it a small border radius of, let's do 5 pixels. Actually, let's do 8 pixels, so 0.8 rem. It looks slightly better. And to create the effect now, where we have like half a bar and then like on top and bottom, what we want to do is just come down here, select the bar with the class of half, and we want to do a width of 100%, actually 50%, so that's going to be half, and now we have that nice effect. And next thing that I'll do is for the bar dot start, so that's going to be still the first one, and I just want to do a transform origin of right, and that's going to have a transition again for the animation, and it's going to be on the transform 650 ms again, cubic Bezier. It's going to be different, so it's going to be 0.54, then -0.81, and then 0.57, 0.57. So that's going to be it for my start. What I'm going to do now is just copy and paste the same thing, and that's going to be for my end, and that's going to be pretty simple. What we want to do here is just we'll get rid of this because we don't need it, and for the end, what we want to do is just actually we do need the transition for the cubic Bezier here too. So as opposed to the transform origin right, it's going to be from left, and we also want to move it all the way here to the side, so we want to do a, what was it, I believe it was align self, and it's going to be flex end, and now you see it looks a lot better. Something else that I want to do now, and since it's like a bit relevant, I'll just like do it under the bar start. Again, this is when the hamburger menu has the class of open. What I want to do is select my bar start, and what I'll do here is just rotate it, transform, rotate, and what you have to do here is just rotate it by 90 degrees. But if you want to create a more drastic effect, you can just multiply 90 degrees by whatever number. For example, I believe I did 5 and the result was like 450. So let me just double check, and 90 times 5, yes, it's like actually 90 times 5, it's gonna equals 450 degrees. And what I want to do as well is translate my x, and it's going to be 0.8 rem, and that's going to be all. I want to do the same thing for my end, so I'll come down here, just copy and paste that, replace the start with end, and the value is going to stay the same for the rotate. The only one that's going to change is for my translate x, and that's just going to be a negative number. And that's going to be pretty much it for the hamburger menu and the nav. And since we're already here, I think it's probably just like better if I do the jQuery now, so that I can just test it out and see that everything is working. So for now, I'll just do that ready, and in here just close that and do function, document. In here, what I want to do is just test out my bars, the animation, as well as the navigation. So I'm just gonna select my menu toggler. Then I want to do unclick, function, and in here I just want to do a reference of whatever is being clicked, which is the hamburger menu toggler, I should say, toggle class of open. And in here I want to say this. Now I'll just copy and paste that, and I want to select my nav, which is the top nav here. And that's pretty much it that we need for the hamburger menu. So I'll just like reload my page and make sure that everything is working. Try that again. So I usually have issues with my, as you can see now, everything is working fine. Just make it bigger. If I hit my hamburger menu, I get the nice animation, as well as my navigation coming from up top. So the next thing that I'll do now is I'm going to go back into my CSS, and I have to work on my main text, and for that I'm also going to be using the background clipping effect as well. So I'm just going to select the landing text, and I'm going to do a position of absolute, top 50%, left 50%, then translate, transform, translate, negative 50%, negative 50%, and that's just going to center it perfectly in the middle. Next, I also want to do a width of 100%, and then I want to text align center. And something else that I want to do is do a C index of, let's do 1, just to make sure that stays up top. And I also want to, actually, did I give it a C index for the top nav? Let me just make sure. Nope. I'll be needing a C index here as well, just to make sure that the text doesn't sit on top of the navigation. So now what I want to do is target my H1. So landing text H1, and what I'll do here is just give a font size something big, so let's do 20 rem. Again, here I want the same font size that I have in my nav, font family I mean. So Toy Historia Demo, sans serif fallback. And since we want the same clipping effect, what I want to do is just come up here and I'll grab it from the navlink hover effect, and I'll just paste it down here. But as you can see, a little bit of my text is being like clipped off. So the way that I fix that is by doing the same thing that I did with the nav, and that's by giving it a padding of 1 rem all around. And as you can see, now my text is fully visible. Something else that I want to do here as well is user select and set it to none, just because I don't want people just dragging around my main logo, although people rarely do that anyways, but I guess it doesn't matter. Now I just want to select my H6, so landing text H6, and that's just going to have a font size 2 rem and a font weight of 300. Actually, I think 400 looks a little bit better, or maybe 300. I'll keep 300. It's up to you anyways. Next thing I'll do is I'm going to be working on my about section. So let's find that. And it should be below here. And I'll do about. And since we want to flex the items inside of that container, we're also going to be selecting the container inside of the about. And we'll do a display of flex. Then we'll do align items, center, and then justified content, center. Let's just scroll down a bit so we can see what's going on. Now you see that we have them all in one line. Now I want to select the heading. So about heading, and I'm going to style that. And what I want to do here is just give it a big font size, 10 rem. Now I'll just give it an opacity of, let's do 0.3, just to make it really light, or transparent in this case. And then I want to select my H6, about heading, H6, and actually this should be my H1. My H6 is going to have a font size of 2 rem and a font weight, let's do 300 again. On top of the H1, I want to create all the styles for the heading itself, which I forgot. It's just going to have a text align of center, text transform, uppercase, and a line height of 0. Just gonna put them on top of each other, and then a margin bottom to create some separation between that and the text, and that's going to be 6 RAM. That's better already. Now what I want to do is create not create, but more like target. So I'm going to target my profile image, and that's just going to have a flex of 1, and it's also going to have a margin rate of 5 rem. Create some separation between the image and the text, and then here I'll just target the about details, and I'll give it a flex 1 as well. So they're basically just going to be taking 50% of the available space, although I'm having some issues because of my social media icons here, and the reason for that is because I have we have to fix that. So we have to come up here on the HTML, my social media. This shouldn't be outside of the about details. This actually should be inside of it. So as you can see, now everything is better and it's showing correctly. I still want to target my social media icons though, so I'll target that div, social media, and I'll create some separation by doing a margin top of 5 rem. That's going to be all for that. Now I want to target like the icons itself, so social media and for that I'm just going to do a font size 5 rem, and then I'll do a transition on the color, so color 650 ms. And as you can see, it looks better already. What I want to do now is create the hover effects for each one of them. So if a Facebook hover, that's just going to have the Facebook color, which is a blue, and color code for that is 4267 B2. I want to do the same thing for my Twitter and Dribble as well. So I'll just copy and paste that and then switch it from Facebook to Twitter. Switch this over to Dribble. And the color for Twitter is also a blue, but it's a lot lighter. And the color code for that is 38A1F3. And Dribble has a pink, and that's going to be EA4C89. So as you can see now, we have the nice hover effects. Next thing that I have to do now is style my services. So just find the comments here, and I'll target my skills. Create some separation again, do a margin top of 10 rem. And here, what I want to do is actually, before I do that, remember that I said we have some reusable classes? Well, the headings is one of them. So now I'll just go back to the reusable comment, and here is where I'm going to have the heading. We also have a container which is reusable and we still haven't styled. So let's do that now. The container will have, I believe it was a width of 90%. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was 90%. It had a max width of 120 rem, so that's as big as it's gonna get, and then a height of 100%. We also want to center it in the middle, so what we want to do is margin 0 auto, and we want to give a position of relative. Now for the section heading, what we want to do is target the section heading, and that's just going to have a text line, center, color is going to be that light gray again, although we already defined the color of the HTML, so we don't have to worry about it here. The font weight is something that's going to be 300, but I'll apply that to the H1 later on. I'm also going to do a margin bottom for some separation, and that's going to be 10 rem. Now what I want to do is target my H1, so section heading H1. Font size is going to be, let's do 3.5, 3 actually. Looks better already. We want to make it really light, so I'll do here, I'm just going to modify the color, and I'm going to do an RGBA of 255, 255, 255, which is white, and I want to give it a transparency of 0.3. Next, what I want to do is text transform with uppercase. I also want to do a font weight of 300, as I mentioned. Then what I want to do is give it a position of relative, and I'm going to give it a margin bottom of 1 rem just to create some separation. Now I'm just going to target the section heading H6, so I'll just copy and paste this, switch it over to the H6, and then I'll just delete whatever I don't need, which in this case I don't need the actually, did I use an H6 or was it a, yeah, it was an H6. So for this, I don't need the background color. All I need is a bigger font size, and for that I believe it was 1.6 rem. Font weight, I also wanted to be lighter, so actually right here, let's do 300. And to create the lines that I had before, we're gonna be creating the before and pseudo element class, pseudo classes, and I'll do it on the H1. So again, I'll just copy and paste this and get rid of everything in between. And what I want to do here is before section heading H1, after content position absolute. Next thing I'll do is do a bottom. Actually, I'll just do a, yes, I actually need the bottom position to be negative 0.5 rem. Then I want to do center in the middle, so I'll do left 50%, and then transform, and it's going to be x negative 50%. Next thing that I want to do is do a background color. That's going to be an RGBA of white again. And it's going to be 0.75. Now I want to target each one of them individually, so just do section heading H1 before, and what I want to do here is just do a width of 10 rem and a height 3 pixels. So you can see the line is already showing up. Just to make it nicer, I'll give it a border radius of 0.8 rem. And now I'll do the same thing for my after, and that's just going to be a circle. So I'll do something smaller, like let's do a width of 1.5 rem, and same thing with the height. So just copy and paste that. And the only difference here is that as opposed to 0.8, it's going to be 100% to make sure that's like a circle. And something else that I want to do is I want to move it on the right spot, so I'm just gonna play around with the bottom position for it, and just copy and paste this one. It should be here, and let's do 0.8, and this doesn't work. Let's do 0.9. Let's do 1. Actually, 1 rem works. So as you can see, it already looks a ton better, and we're just gonna keep styling it. So the next step is for us to style, what was it? Let me scroll back down. Yeah, keep styling the my services section. And what we need to do there is just continue with my skills, and here I'll just give it a display of grid, and I also want to do grid template columns. And what I want to do here is just set the repeat function and then do some auto fitting and use a min max function to determine the minimum width and height, and basically how much space it's gonna take up. So in this case, that's basically gonna allow me to create a grid that wraps, and we don't really need media queries to make them responsive. So how you set that up is do repeat function, and then you do auto fit, then you separate it with a comma, then min max, and the minimum size is going to be 25 rem, and the maximum is just going to be 1 fraction of whatever the available space is. Now what you want to do is a grid gap, just to create some separation between the items, and let's just do 2.5 rem. And I want to align my text, align text, align text. Oh, text align. That's why I couldn't find it. Center. Now what I want to do is actually work on my skill div. So you can see everything is in the middle now, and it's wrapping. If I make it bigger, you should see them side by side. See there? And to show you that it's responsive right out the box, let me go on my responsive view, and you can see how they wrap when I make them smaller. So now I'll just style my skill divs, and I'll just give those a display of flex direction. It's going to be a column, and it's going to justify the content to the center and align my items to the center. And I'm also going to give it some padding all around of, let's do 2 rem. Now what I want to do is select my H1, and I'll do skill H1, do text transform uppercase, and do some letter spacing of 2 pixels, and then I'm going to do a margin top is going to be 2 rem, and then on the right it's going to be -2 pixels, and bottom is also going to be 2 rem, and then 0 on the left. Now something else that we want to do is target the icon container. So just come down here, icon container, want to give it a width of 10 rem, a height of 10 rem, and a border of 3 pixels solid, and it's going to be that yellow. And for the background color, I want to do the same thing, but I'm gonna set it to the pink. Now what I want to do is a margin bottom to create some separation of, let's do 2 rem, and I'm also gonna give this a display of flex. And that's just gonna allow me to center the icon in the middle of the container. And what I'll do now is select my icons. So icon container and what I'll do here is actually I also have to rotate it. So I'll do a transform rotate so that we get that diamond, and it's going to be rotated by 45 degrees. And now my social media, my icons, it's just going to have a color of that yellow again. Next, I'm just gonna give it a font size of 5 rem. Then I'm gonna do a margin of auto to center it in the middle. And as you can see, it's like rotated along with the div. So what you want to do here is like rotate the icon itself. So transform rotate, and that's supposed to 45 degrees. You still do 45 degrees, but you do a negative 45 degrees. So as you can see, that fixes the problem. Now what we want to do is work on the portfolio. So for that, we just do that portfolio item, and we want to do a display of flex. Let me just scroll down to that area, and as you can see, I'm having some issues with my icons, so I probably just did something wrong in my HTML. FAS, just like double check. I don't know what's wrong there. So it's IFAS, then FA chart. Oh, the issue was because I had group, but it's not group. It's actually just like without the group thing. And I'll go into font awesome really quick because I don't remember what the name for it was. Let's do chart. And chart bar. So we'll come down here, chart bar. So now it should be working, and yes it is. And now let's just come down here and style the portfolio. And for that, all that I'm going to be doing is for the display of flex, I'll just align my items to the center. Then justify content, center, create some separation with a margin bottom of 5 rem. As you can see, it looks a little better already. And below my portfolio item, I want to target my last child. So portfolio item, last child, and I want to remove the margin bottom. And now I'll just target the images, and I'll do portfolio image img, and I'll do a flex of 1. So it's going to be divided on 50-50, and then same thing for portfolio description. It's going to have a flex of 1. And as you can see, it already looks better, but we also have to give it some margin on the left to create some separation and a few other things so that we can make it look better. So now I'm just going to target the H6 within it. So portfolio description H6. And what we want to do here is just give it a font size of 1.5 rem and a text transform uppercase followed by font weight of 300, opacity of 0.3, and as I mentioned, we need a class that's going to give us a margin right. So let's go up to our reusable classes again, and what we want to do here is create a class that has the name of has margin right, and we'll just do margin right, and I believe the value for that was margin right. Let's do 5 rem. Now we have to go back into the HTML, and we're going to be applying it to the portfolio items. So we're going to be applying it here to the portfolio image. So now we have to count down, since this time around we switched them over. It's going to be on the portfolio description, and for the last one it's going to be on the portfolio image again. As you can see, we now have the separation and it looks a lot better. We also have to work on the container for the images so that they look a lot better. So portfolio image, have to come down here. So portfolio image, what we want to do here is we want to keep them smaller. So actually let's do flex 2. So the width, let's do for the container image, let's do 50 rem, see how that looks. Now that doesn't look bad at all. I think I'll keep that, so I'll keep it at 50 rem. And something else that we want to do here is actually just create some separation as well. So come down here, and it's actually the margin bottom. It's supposed to be, so let's do margin top here as well. Well, we can shorten this out. So we'll just do, let me check that out again. Do margin top and bottom. Let's do 5. No, that doesn't work. Let's just keep the bottom at 5. And here I have some issues with the separation. Let's see what the issue is. So portfolio item, and then we have the section itself. So let's inspect that. So here what I'm missing is I don't have the margin bottom. So what I want to do is apply it. Let's go back into the CSS. That was the heading, I believe. The reusable classes. Oh, I see what the issue is now. I have a margin top when it should be a margin bottom. So as you see, that was the issue before, and that's why it was like so close. And it's not just oh, I also forgot to add a top and bottom padding to my section, so let's do that right now. And let's just do 6 rem padding 6 RAM. And now with all of the issues out of the way, everything should be working as it should. And it is. As you can see, we have the right separation now. So we can just focus on the rest of the items. Scroll back down, and after I work on the H6, I'm just going to target the H1. H1, and the H1 is just going to have a font size of 3 rem, and it's also going to have a font weight of so just get rid of this, and we don't need the opacity, so we'll get rid of that as well, and instead we'll just do a margin top and bottom for rem and 0 left and right. Now what we want to target is the button or the CTA, so we'll do dot portfolio description CTA, and what I want to do here is just give it a display of inline block and a margin top of 2.5 rem, do a font size of 1.5 rem, and then what I want to do is text transform of uppercase, and the color, it's going to be a lighter blue, so that's going to be 3882 FF, and finally I'll just give it a hover effect. So that portfolio description .cta hover, and it's going to be a darker color, and that's just going to be 2F67 and CD. Can't forget the hash. So also do a transition. Well, we just need to do the color here, and it's going to be 650 again, MS. And it already looks better. Now we have to move on to the services section, which is not the services, the timeline. So we'll come here in the timeline, and what I want to do here is just select my timeline UL, and what I'll do here is do a border left, and that's going to be 4 pixels, solid yellow, a border radius of 0.8 rem. I'm also going to have an RGBA background, RGBA, and that's going to be 0, 0, 0. Let's do something really light, so let's do 0.05. Then I'm also going to do a margin 0 auto to center it, position of relative, and padding 5 rem all around, list style none, text align, it's going to be to the left, and finally a width of 70%. Let me scroll back down just so that we can see how it's looking. So you can see now it looks better. Now we just come down and style the H1 timeline H1, and that's going to be, it's going to have a font size of 2 rem, text transform uppercase, font weight 300, margin bottom, it's going to be 1 rem, And finally, the opacity is going to be 0.3. Now I want to select the date. And what I want to do here is just select timeline, date, and I'll do a border bottom of 1 pixel, solid, RGBA, 255, 255, 255, and it's going to be really light, so 0.1. So you can see it here. Next thing I'll do, I'm gonna do a margin bottom of 1 rem. Then I'll do padding bottom of 1 rem as well. And then I'll give it a position of relative. Now I'm gonna select the last one, so I'll do timeline, and then the date, then last of type, and I'll do reset the padding bottom, set it to 0. Same thing with the margin bottom, and border is going to be none. Now I want to do the pseudo elements, and this is going to be timeline, date, before. Do the same thing again for after. And here I just want to do a position of absolute, display of block, and top 50%. Then transform, translate Y, 50%. And now I'll target each of them individually. So timeline, date, before. And what I want to do here is just set my left. Actually, do the content first, and then I'll just do the attribute. And what I want to do now is just grab the data date attribute that we did before. So in here we'll just do data date, and as you can see here, but you can't see it all that well because it's on top of it. So what I have to do now is just give it a left of -21 rem so that we can move it all the way to the side. And what I also want to do is do a text align of let's do right and min width of 12 rem. So now everything is going to be closer. Something else that I want to do is I want to give it a font size of 1.5 rem, make it a little bit bigger, and that's going to be all for the before. Now we're going to be doing the after. And for this, we'll just do content, which is going to be an empty string, and then we'll just do let's do box shadow 0, 0, 0, 4 pixels, and then do the pink. As you can see now, we have the little circle square over here, so we want to do a border radius of 100%, make it a circle. And now what we want to do is move it all the way to the left. For that, I'll do left 7.7 rem, actually negative. And we're gonna give it a height of, let's do 1.5 rem, and we'll do the same thing with the width. Now we have the circle, And what we have to do now is do a background color of, let's do 31, 35, 34. That looks a little bit better. Actually, it's not centered, so maybe we should move it over a little bit more. Let's do something like 0.8, maybe 0.9, or maybe 8 RAM. I think that looks fine, so let's keep it at -8. And that's going to be pretty much it for the timeline. It's already looking a lot better, and the website itself is taking shape. Now the only thing we have to work on is the contact form and the footer. So for the contact form, we'll just come down here, and actually I don't have a comment for the contact form, so let's do that right now. And just do contact. And in here, what we want to do is just target the contact, and it's not going to be transparent. We'll actually give it a background color, and it's going to be the same color as the background. Background color going to be 22 1E3F. As you can see now, we can no longer see the graphics on the side. What I want to do next is target my form and give it a width of 70%. Then I'll give it a margin of 0 auto to center it. Now I'll just select the form label. And that's going to have a font size of 1.5 RAM. Now I'll select the input, the select, and the text area. And I have a width of 100%, padding all around of 1 RAM. Then it's going to have a margin top of 5 pixels. And it's also going to have border none, and the outline color is going to be the pink. It's going to be when we focus in, so it's going to be the outline. Now we have to style the button. Just input, and it's going to be type of submit. And here I just want to do the width, set it back to initial, because as you can see there now it's taking all of the space available, and that's not what I want. The background color, it's going to be the pink, and the color inside of it is going to be the light gray. Then I want to do padding, top and bottom 1 RAM, and to left and right, make it bigger, and border. Actually, I already removed the border up top on my inputs, so I don't need it here. I'm going to do a border radius of 0.8 RAM, and then what I want to do is cursor, pointer. And finally, I want a transition for my hover effect. This should be on the background. And that's going to be 650 ms. Now we want to do the actual hover. So for that, we'll just grab this, do hover. The color, I'm just gonna switch it back to that blue, navy blue, and the background color, it's going to be the yellow this time around. And that's going to be pretty much it for my form. Now I'll just like work on the footer, and that's going to be pretty simple. Just gonna do copyright, and with 100%. I'm gonna give it a height. Well, actually, I don't need a height here. I'm just use the padding. Text align, center. Do a background color of a darker blue, and that's going to be 16, 16, 2D. Next, do the padding, top and bottom to rem, 0 left and right, and position is going to be relative. So you can see that already looks better. Now I want to work on my button, and that's going to, that has the class of up. We're going to do position absolute. Give it a width of 5 rem, height 5 rem, and background color going to be that light gray. Then top is going to be, let's do negative 2.5 rem. Border radius, so 100%. Down here and also do the right. Let's do 5 rem. And something else that I want to do is also select my icon, and I'll just give it the color of, let's do that again, do the, let's do font size of, let's do 2 rem. And I think it's better if I just do the same color that I did for the footer, so 16, 16 2D. And here to center the icon in the middle, what I want to do is display flex, and here I just want to do margin auto, and since it's not centering, font size margin auto, copyright. Oh, come on, I made a mistake somewhere up here. Up, let me check the HTML. Oh, actually, it's because the paragraph tag doesn't go inside of the up, it goes outside the footer. So as you can see now, everything is working as it should be. And now what we have to do is in animation. Actually, now I'll just select the copyright paragraph, copy, and do font size of 1.3 rem. Make it smaller, maybe 4. Now we have to do the animation, the pulsing animation for the button, and for that I'll just come down here for the animation thing and do keyframes, and I'll call it pulse, and for that I'll just do a 0%, then 70%, and then I'll just do 100%. Now inside of here, what I want to do is a box shadow. It's gonna be 0, 0, 0, 0, and then RGBA. That'll be 253, 87, 191, and then the opacity 0.99. Now I'm just gonna copy and paste this, paste it inside of my 70%, and then here it's going to be 2 rem as opposed to 0, and the opacity is going to be 0. And I want to copy and paste this again instead of my 100%, and that's going to be all. Now I just have to add it to my button, and that's pretty simple. Come up here and I do animation, pulse, and then what I want to do is 2 seconds and then infinite. And as you can see here now, my animation is working. Although I might have made a mistake here because it's not. So it goes from 2. Oh, actually, I'm supposed to leaving it at 99. I have to do 0 here. So now we get the desired effect. And yeah, guys, that's pretty much it for the desktop version of the site. Now we have to work on making it responsive. And for that, I'm gonna make the next part, so make sure you stay tuned for that video because it's coming up as soon as I upload this one. So I'll see you guys on the next video.